Hi guys, it's me, Chaz HD, and welcome to the third Grand Prix weekend of 2025, and it is the Japanese Grand Prix. We are back at Suzuka, and we are back for another round of the Formula One Championship in 2025, and the field so far, after some Friday practice, which took place quite a while ago, not looking really that surprising compared to what we expected. Maybe a couple slight surprises, you could argue, but nothing really out of, really out of whack. Let's say, given what really has happened so far this season, and just in general what our expectations are at this point of the season with the field and the pecking order and all of that. But yeah, we are obviously here tonight for a qualifying preview. And as usual, in this qualifying preview, I'll be going through all the stuff I usually go through, which is obviously the data from Friday, looking at the results, firstly, of practice, of practice 2, then getting into the sector time data, just to understand why certain teams were quick and why certain teams were not so quick, and then we'll get into my own personal predictions and how I think it'll play out. Some stats as well going into qualifying that you guys need to know. But yeah, like I said, it's looking kind of as expected so far. Hopefully that can change around in qualifying. Maybe we get some proper surprises. But yeah, at the minute, looking like it's going to be pretty much the weekend we expected, and looks like it's going to be pretty much a dry weekend. There is some rain, quite a bit of rain forecast overnight between qualifying and the race. That should make for a nice green track on Sunday, which will make the race hopefully a bit more exciting. But in regards to qualifying, bone dry and absolutely no worries about the weather. But yeah, we'll get into the usual stuff we'll get into in a moment. Just want to say quickly, hope you guys are doing well. Of course, a couple weeks it's been since the last stream and the last Grand Prix. And obviously the first weekend of April we're already at. I don't know if it's me or maybe some others watching or in the chat kind of feel this way as well. Probably with me, it's mainly because I've been so busy, but I just can't believe it's already the first weekend of April. This year has absolutely flown by. But yeah, looking forward to this Grand Prix still. It's Suzuka. We love this track. And yeah, we don't always get great races at Suzuka, but Suzuka is Suzuka. So yeah, it's still such a pleasure to be racing here. But yeah, hope you guys are doing well, no matter what time zone you're in, what part of the world you're from. I hope you're all doing well, and hope you'll join me this evening in previewing what is going to happen in qualifying. And finally, before we go any further, there is a poll running at the top of the live chat where I've asked you guys, obviously, who will take pole position for the Japanese Grand Prix, and some interesting options this evening. You've got either Oscar or Piastri, or Lando, or Norris as your options for who will take pole position. Yeah, let me know who you think takes pole. I think from that poll, you can already really tell just how the fight for pole position really is going to go, and just how it's been so far this weekend. So yeah, let's just get straight into it. And we will start, of course, with the results from practice 2. And McLaren, as you can see, miles ahead of everybody else, nearly half a second clear of the next best car. Oscar Piastri ending up ahead of Lando Norris. Bit surprising, not because Oscar is not the same level as Lando, but as we'll get into in the sector times, Lando was actually, he did the best sector for McLaren in each sector, yet he ended up slower than Piastri in practice 2. So overall, Lando just wasn't able to hook up all of those sectors on that one quickest lap. So Lando quite possibly has a lot more pace in himself in that car than what he has shown so far. But yeah, McLaren are clearly ahead of everybody else, and that's no surprise. This track is perfect if you have got a car that aerodynamically and chassis-wise is a clear step ahead of the rest of the field. We saw it with Mercedes a few years ago. Obviously, Red Bull last year dominated this Grand Prix. Red Bull back in the V8 days would dominate this Grand Prix. Obviously, Ferrari back in the day, McLaren, Williams. If you've got the overall best car in terms of grip, Suzuka is a perfect circuit to really showcase that. And that's what McLaren have done so far. And they are absolutely going to get pole and win this Grand Prix. I have zero doubt about that. And you guys shouldn't have any doubt about that either. But the fight after that, for the rest of the top 10 is, at least for qualifying, is really intriguing. Isaac Hadjar, third for Racing Bulls. Racing Bulls continuing their brilliant form in terms of pace, I guess you could say. And it's not really a surprise they're looking quick here. They're clearly the quickest midfield team. Again, that's not a surprise. We've seen this season that in high-speed corners, and Suzuka has plenty of those, that they have easily the best midfield car and are not even that far away from the front runners. And when I say front runners, I'm not saying McLaren. I'm saying more, say, Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull. And here at Suzuka, their car is just suited to the track, absolutely suited to a T. As both Racing Bulls are the top 5, and Liam Lawson, after a disastrous 2 races for Red Bull, is now suddenly looking super quick in the Racing Bulls car and in the top 5, ahead of both Red Bull cars. If that doesn't tell you that the Red Bull car is not as good as the Racing Bulls car, and that Max Verstappen is just an unbelievably quick driver to be where he is in the championship, given how slow that Red Bull is, then yeah, I don't really know what to tell you if you can't clearly see that the Racing Bulls even is a better car than the Red Bull. It's just Max is able to make it work somehow in that Red Bull to be where he is in the championship. Lewis Hamilton in 4th. Ferrari not as quick as I expected over a single lap. We'll get more into that in the sector time data, where I think there are some areas definitely they could improve. But yeah, a bit disappointed with Ferrari, I must say. George Russell 6th for Mercedes. I think Mercedes have definitely got a bit more pace in the bag. Normally, they do improve quite a bit from a Friday to a Saturday. So I think Russell is right in the fight for a second row grid slot. Max Verstappen in 8th. Yeah, not great in the different liveried Red Bull this weekend. They've gone back to that white livery that they had back in, was it Turkey? About 4 years ago. Yeah, the Red Bull car is not looking great, but Max is still somehow dragging the pace out of it that he is. He will be right in the mix for a 3rd, 4th, 5th on the grid, no doubt about it. But yeah, obviously compared to McLaren, is where they want to be. They are absolutely nowhere near McLaren. Nowhere near. And to be fair, no other team is right now. Alpine then in 9th with Pierre Gasly. Very good lap from Gasly to get himself in the top 10. And then Carlos Sainz, P10 for Williams. Williams not really on the same pace as Racing Bulls, which isn't a surprise, but it is a surprise that they are that far behind. 0.3 of a second. I would have expected maybe a tenth and a half closer from them. But yeah, Williams just clearly slower than Racing Bulls. And Williams a bit fortunate to be where they are in the championship, because they definitely, at this point, do not have the quickest midfield car. You would have to say that is the Racing Bulls car. But Racing Bulls have done such a poor job at actually scoring points, which is why Racing Bulls are 9th in the championship, as opposed to Williams, who are 4th and level on points with Ferrari. So, yeah, Williams lacking quite a bit of pace, but still decent pace for them. They're still looking to be just about top 10 runners, I would say. And then the rest of the field, Alex Albon, behind Sainz for once. And then the two Saubers, quite impressive. I have to say the two Saubers, 12th, 13th. 14th and 15th for Haas. I'm a bit disappointed with them. After what happened in Shanghai and how quick they were, I would have expected a bit more from them. But I wasn't expecting them to be in the top 10. But I wouldn't have thought they'd be that far off the top 10. Half a second or more? Kimi Antonelli, 16th. He has definitely got more pace in in himself. He should be really just inside the top 10. The Mercedes car is not amazingly quick, so I'm not going to say Antonelli should be in like the top 5 or top 6. But yeah, he is having a bit of a struggle. Fernando Alonso, 17th. Aston Martin, quite slow. I will get onto why that probably is in a moment. And then pretty much confirmation that the Red Bull car is so difficult to drive. Yuki Tsunoda, 18th. 2.5 seconds off the pace. 2 seconds slower than Max. That car is very difficult to drive. And I think we already need to not give credit where credit's due. I wouldn't quite say that, but I think we can already drop our criticisms, I guess you could say, of Liam Lawson, because that car is just very hard to drive. And only, seemingly, Max can make it work. Lance Stroll, 19th, and then Jack Doohan, 20th. Doohan had a massive crash at turn 1, trying to keep his foot flat to the floor through turn 1, or through the entry with DRS open. Very risky move, and it did not work, and he nearly got quite seriously injured from it. It was quite a big crash, so he won't be doing that again, Will Doohan. Normally, drivers switch the DRS off before they hit turn 1. Doohan thought it was possible to go through turn 1 with DRS open. He found out violently that that was not the case, that you cannot do that. So that's why he ended up in 20th. So let's go on to the sector time data. And the first sector is all high-speed corners. I love the first sector. It is, the S's at Suzuka is probably one of the best sectors of any racetrack on the planet. It is so fun to watch the cars, even if you drive it on the F1 game or on a racing sim. It is just absolutely brilliant. It is motor racing porn, is what it is. And in the first sector, it is very close between a lot of teams. Ferrari the quickest, not really a surprise necessarily that they're that quick. We saw in Shanghai and even Melbourne to an extent. In the high-speed corners, that Ferrari car is good. It's just the slower speed corners in, over a single lap where they struggle more. That's what we've seen so far. Bit surprising, though, that McLaren, only 4th quickest, you would have expected them to be right there with Ferrari, maybe just slightly ahead. So, yeah, that is that is a bit surprising that McLaren only 4th, but not that far off in lap time, 0.07 of a second. Mercedes pretty good through there, and also Aston Martin, very good first sector speed, but as you'll see in a moment, their pace completely drops off. Racing Bulls as well, good. Alpine, good. Red Bull could do a bit better, I reckon, given how good Ferrari and Mercedes are looking through this part of the lap. Red Bull need really an extra 10th of a second to really make Max's day tomorrow. Not in terms of getting pole, but in terms of getting, say, 3rd on the grid, which has to be the aim, unfortunately, for Red Bull. Williams, not too great, but to be honest, we have seen that Williams in the high-speed corners is not that great of a car. A lot better in the slower speed corners, the Williams, than the high-speed corners, which is why Racing Bulls are so much quicker this weekend than Williams, because in high-speed corners, the Racing Bulls is I'd say, a clear step ahead of the Williams. Sauber then in 9th, and then Haas in 10th. I have no idea why Haas is that far off the pace in the first sector. They should be at least 3 to 4 tenths of a second quicker in this part of the lap. So if they can find that extra 3 or 4 tenths in this part of the lap, that could put them in maybe slight contention to get into Q3, which is not, well, at least coming into the weekend, I thought was not impossible for the team, given, again, how quick they were a couple of weeks ago in Shanghai. The middle sector, though, you've got, it's mostly flat out sections. You've got the, 2 Degners, you've got the hairpin, and then you've got the spoon curve as well. So you've got a mix of high speed, medium speed, a very slow speed corner, obviously the hairpin, and a couple long acceleration zones. McLaren somehow hooking it up big time in the middle sector. I don't honestly know why they are that quick compared to everybody else. To be 2 tenths quicker than the next best car in the Racing Bulls, but 4 tenths of a second quicker than Ferrari in just the middle sector. That is incredible pace from McLaren. And again, I can't explain it, because again, with the Ferrari car, we have seen a bit of a weakness in slower speed corners. There's only maybe 1 or 2, you could say, slow or medium speed corners where they might struggle. So 4 tenths off is hard to explain. And they should be really, I'd say, a quarter of a second at least quicker through this part of the lap. Maybe even in total, probably 3 tenths of a second they need to find in this middle sector, because there's no excuse for them to be that far off in that part of the lap when they were looking so good in just the first sector. Mercedes as well, half a second off in the middle sector. I just don't understand that. They also need to find probably about 2 to 3 tenths of a second. Same for Red Bull as well. And then you got Alpine, Haas, Sauber, and then Aston Martin. Really don't get why they're so slow in the middle sector. I'm not surprised they're slower in the middle sector, because you've got quite a bit more long acceleration zones, and we know the Aston Martin is not great, down the straights. It's a bit of a draggy car, I guess you could say, but there's no excuse for them to be that slow, and they should be really finding a couple tenths of a second in this part of the lap. And then the final sector is flat out, except for the final chicane. McLaren again finding a lot of pace, and in the slow speed corners, the slow speed corners of that final chicane, the McLaren is just very, very good. A tenth quicker than Mercedes, couple tenths better than Racing Bulls, and as you can see, a quarter of a second better than Ferrari, and that can only be explained by McLaren just simply being a lot better through that final chicane, not just in terms of hitting the apexes, but also getting the traction on the exit of the chicane as well. That's the only explanation as to why Ferrari are that far off in the final sector. But even then, I think Ferrari and probably Red Bull as well should be about a tenth of a second quicker in this part of the lap. Williams, okay. Sauber, okay. Haas, not great. And then Aston Martin, again, miles off in the final sector. Again, down the straights, we know they're not very quick, but to be that far off is quite poor. I think Aston Martin definitely can find probably about half a second, just if they adjust the setup of their car, maybe to make it a bit more slippery in a straight line and a bit quicker in a straight line. I think they maybe to make them even stronger in the first sector. Maybe they've just put a bit too much wing on, but in the final sector and the middle sector, they are really quite far off, and that's why they looked like the slowest team in practice. So overall, McLaren looking great, but Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull, I do think those teams have not quite found their potential over a single lap. Ferrari, I think, probably missing about 0.4 of a second at most. Mercedes, probably about 0.3, and then Red Bull, I would probably say, what? With Red Bull, I'd probably say about 0.5 second. And if we go back to the top 10 in practice 2, you can see Ferrari 0.4 off, Russell 4.5 off, and Max 5.5 off. So I do think there is the potential for those three teams to be a lot quicker and a lot closer to McLaren. I still think overall McLaren, even if those three teams do hit their potential, I still think McLaren will overall have the best car. But it should be closer than it is. It really should. Especially given, again, in the first sector, McLaren are only the 4th best team, at least from practice 2. Ferrari and Mercedes, very good through this part of the lap. There's no reason why that shouldn't continue in the middle sector and to a degree the final sector. But as you can see, they are really losing a lot of lap time, which is not, you can't condone, really. There is more pace in those cars, but whether they can actually unlock that potential, which I think's there, is another thing. We'll have to see. But I think McLaren are still clear favourites for pole, but again, Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull, I think definitely have got more potential in their cars that they haven't quite found. Maybe they will find it for qualifying. I really hope they do, because it would really make qualifying very exciting to have more than just McLaren fighting for pole. And also for Aston Martin, like I said, I think they can find probably another 0.5 second. Even if they did, though, as you can see, it would still put them nowhere near the top 10. So they just fundamentally don't have a fast car over a single lap. It's a lot quicker with race fuel on board, no doubt, but over a single lap, they just don't have a very quick car. But let's get into, quickly before I get into my own personal predictions, let me get into what do you call it? Let me get into what I think the pecking order is for qualifying. So I still think McLaren, the quickest car, even if Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull find their potential, still think McLaren have just about got the edge over those teams. Second quickest, honestly, I think once it's all turned up, the engines, I probably would say Mercedes. Second quickest. Third quickest, Ferrari. Fourth quickest, Racing Bulls. And then fifth quickest, Red Bull. But Max will be a lot higher on the grid than, say, where he is in practice, because it's Max Verstappen. So Max will probably still be like third, fourth, fifth on the grid, and will be making that car look a lot better than it actually is. But that's the pecking order for the top 5. And then after that, I'd probably say Williams 6th, Alpine 7th, and then Sauber 8th, and then it's a mix-up really between Haas and Aston Martin as to who has the slowest car. Again, Aston Martin can find a lot more pace. I have no doubt about that. But let's get into my final predictions for qualifying based off of really the data we've seen so far. And this is my final prediction. I think Oscar Piastri just about will deliver when it matters and take pole. And of Lando Norris and the McLaren, that'll be a front row lockout for McLaren here at Suzuka. George Russell, I think, will be only a couple tenths of a second behind in third. Max Verstappen, I think, will be fourth. And the third row, yet again, will be shared by Ferrari. Hamilton fifth, Leclerc sixth. I just don't think Ferrari are going to deliver, unfortunately, tomorrow. Isaac Hadjar, though, I'm going in seventh, just behind the two Ferraris, and Liam Lawson in eighth. All Racing Bulls fourth row, which I think is absolutely plausible given how quick they've been so far this weekend. Kimi Antonelli ninth for Mercedes. He will find a lot more pace and he'll get himself just about in the top 10. And then Carlos Sainz, I think, will sneak in for 10th place. So that is my final prediction for qualifying. Let me know, who do you think will get pole position? Will it be the McLaren drivers, or do you think there is a surprise in order? Let me know in the chat or in the poll running at the top of the chat, and I'll in a moment get into a couple of your comments. But here are quickly some key stats for you guys to remember going forward into qualifying. McLaren, their last pole position in Japan was in 2008, 17 years ago, with Lewis Hamilton, and that was at the Fuji Speedway. They ended up not winning that Grand Prix. McLaren, though, their last pole position at Suzuka was in 1991 with Gerhard Berger, and that's actually that Grand Prix. That's the last time that McLaren locked out the front row at Suzuka, and in that race they got the 1-2 in the race, and actually Senna won his third world championship in that race as well. 34 years is how long it's been since McLaren have had pole at Suzuka. You may be thinking, oh, surely during the Hakkinen days, surely McLaren got pole. They didn't. They did not. It was purely Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari during that era. Michael, probably the best driver ever to race around Suzuka in terms of just the pace he had and the form he had around this circuit. But yeah, that was McLaren's last pole at Suzuka, 1991. And McLaren had a decent qualifying here last year, given where they were pace-wise a year ago. 3rd and 6th they were, and obviously failed in the end to get a podium in the race. But yeah, was a decent qualifying at the time. They're surely heading for at least pole tomorrow. For Red Bull, obviously they took pole here in 2024 and have taken the last 3 pole positions in Japan, and have taken 3 poles obviously in Japan since 2015, 10 years ago. And yeah, last year, not only was it pole position, it was second, the front row, and they finished 1 and 2 in the race as well. This time last year, Red Bull were at their absolute peak of performance. But since then, it's only got worse, really. For the Scuderia, their last pole position in Japan was in 2019 with Sebastian Vettel 6 years ago. The qualifying that weekend was postponed until Sunday morning because of a storm. I remember it well. I remember doing both a qualifying and race watch along that Sunday morning. 2 streams in the space of like 6 hours. It was absolutely mental that morning, and still wild that was 6 years ago. And that is their only pole position here in Japan since 2015. And actually, before that pole position in 2019, with Vettel here at Suzuka, the last pole position Ferrari had in Japan and at Suzuka, you'd have to go back to 2006, where they locked out the front row with Felipe Massa and Michael Schumacher. That is just how bad of a record, really, Ferrari have here at Suzuka in the last 20 years, basically. And last year, qualifying wasn't really that great for them, 4th and 8th. If they ended up with those positions in qualifying tomorrow, to be honest, it wouldn't really be that big of a surprise, because they just don't still fundamentally have that all-around pace to really be fighting for pole. But for Mercedes-Benz, a much better record in this last 10 years than Ferrari. Their last pole in Japan was in 2018 with Lewis Hamilton, and they've taken 4 pole positions in Japan since 2015. Last year, though, only 7th and 9th in qualifying. They're definitely going to end up with a better result than that. Tomorrow morning, at least for us in the UK, tomorrow morning is qualifying in Japan. And just a quick reminder before I read any comments, just a reminder of the plan content-wise for the Grand Prix weekend. So just like the last Grand Prix, I will not be doing a qualifying watch-along tomorrow morning. I will only be doing a watch-along for the race on Sunday morning. So tomorrow morning, there will be no watch along. But again, on Sunday morning, I will be live as usual, 2 hours before the race. This time at 4 a.m. UK time, it will be. To build up to the race starts at 6 a.m. here in the UK. Niblo, my co-commentator, will be joining me for the Japanese Grand Prix. And we'll obviously take you through the Grand Prix. And then on Monday, there'll be a podcast reviewing the Japanese Grand Prix weekend. Of course, this is the first part of a triple header. And one thing I can announce is that the qualifying watch-alongs will be returning for the next 2 races in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, where I'll be doing both a qualifying and race watch-along. So don't worry, they are coming back. The race weekends where I do a watch-along for both qualifying and the race. Like I said, they are coming back starting next weekend. Also, with Niblo coming on, it might be, unfortunately, the last time he comes on for a few races, because I know the Saudi Arabia and Miami races are probably not good enough times for him to come on. But next week in Bahrain, I think there's a decent chance he might be able to come on, because I know the Liverpool game that week or that day, the same day of the Grand Prix, finishes right before the race starts. So he might be on for next week in Bahrain. But yeah, if not, then yeah, you sadly probably won't hear him on commentary again until probably Imola in the middle of May. But fingers crossed he'll be on next weekend as well. But yeah, that is the plan content-wise for this weekend, and pretty much going forward for the next couple Grand Prix as well. As I can see, not many comments, so I'll just quickly read out the few we have. Rook saying Mike is quiet again. When I've listened back to it, it honestly sounds fine. If it is quieter, it can only be like slightly. Nothing dramatically has changed on my end. But hope you're doing well. Is so far here in April. Todd saying I don't like the poll choices. Yuki didn't get to do a quali run in FP2. I know, but if we go back to the results of practice 2, he was not going to gain obviously 2 seconds with his quali run. So if he had done a quali run, he still probably would have ended up not just outside of the top 10, but way outside of the top 10. I think he probably would have ended up maybe at best ahead of the 2 Haas's, or maybe ahead of Bortoleto and the Sauber, but he wouldn't have been anywhere near the top 10. And again, it's because that Red Bull car is just not that good. So yeah, he's probably going to do better than 18th, but yeah, it's not looking good already. But hopefully he has a good weekend. Of course, it's home Grand Prix for Sonoda. Had Char on pole, imagine that. I gotta say, Isaac is doing a great job. Really has been easily the most impressive of the rookies. I know people say, "Oh, Antonelli's done decent so far," and he has, but I'm the most impressed by Hadjar, because I did not expect him to really be that great, to be honest. Dunchery, I think it is, says, yeah, we all know that McLaren are the fastest cars on the grid, but that shouldn't be the reason why we should believe that pole position is between Lando Norris and Oscar. Instead, Lewis on pole. I mean, I would love if all the cars were pretty much equal and we could have, the possibility of multiple drivers on pole, but McLaren at the minute looks like they've got easily the quickest cars, so it's between Norris and Piastri, sadly. But yeah, it would be great if we could have like a Verstappen, Russell, and even the Ferrari drivers in there, but they just, at the minute, they just don't seem to have the pace that we maybe hoped or expected to a degree. Willifon saying, and it is true, Ferrari have not won in Japan for 21 years. 2004 is the last time they won here at Suzuka and in Japan in general. And yes, Todd, the next two races are Bahrain and Jeddah. And like I said, I will do a quali and race watch along for both of those races. And then in terms of the plan after that, watch along wise, it really depends on how this triple header goes. In terms of, Red Bull, for example, supposed to be bringing quite a sizable upgrade next week in Bahrain. If that doesn't work and McLaren continue to easily get pole and easily win, then my content plans might be a bit altered, let's say, once we get to the Miami Grand Prix going forward from there, until we get other teams joining the party up front. Because if we are just getting races where McLaren are easily winning, then I'm more likely to do less streams, if you know what I mean. But if if Red Bull can get right up there, which I think they can at some point, then obviously I'm more likely to do more watch-alongs rather than less. So, yeah. But yeah, Bahrain and Jeddah, the next two races, and the next race in Bahrain, absolutely massive for Red Bull. If that upgrade works, we might have a season on our hands. But those are pretty much all the comments, and let me finish up this poll. Of course, a bit of a meme, the poll that I did, but the point was made that it's really between the two McLaren drivers, and I asked who will take pole position for the Japanese Grand Prix. 23 votes, and 39% went for Lando, 34% for Piastri, 17% for Oscar, and 8% for Norris. So it seems pretty equal overall. Todd saying should get interesting around Spain. That's a bit too long though to wait if you're those other teams behind McLaren to get those upgrades on. I think Imola will be an interesting race in terms of upgrades. That'll be a very interesting Grand Prix, because I know Ferrari, I've even heard stories that Ferrari are already planning a big upgrade package for that race weekend. Not really heard anything about Mercedes. Obviously, you'd imagine they've got an upgrade coming probably for that race as well. But yeah, we know Red Bull have got an upgrade coming next week. It's just whether it will give them that extra. I mean, they need at least an extra 2 to 3 tenths of a second just to get to the point where they could probably battle McLaren. Never mind, beat them. So, yeah, we will see. But don't give up hope yet, guys, on 2025. Yeah, McLaren are easily the best right now. Things can and probably will change as the season goes on. So do not give up on this year just yet. And of course, there are plenty of races, still over 20 races to go in 2025. Saying that, make sure to check out my last video that I did a week ago about why I think, why I think the 2025 championship is almost over in terms of the chances for the championship for Ferrari. Link in the description. Make sure to go check that video. And please watch the video a bit before you say pass comment, and let me at least explain why I say that Ferrari's chances are almost over. Because the reasoning I have is, I think, quite reasonable once you actually listen to the point I make. But yeah, make sure to go check out that video. Like I said, I uploaded it about a week ago. So if you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. But yeah, like I said, I will not be live for the qualifying session tomorrow morning, but I will be live on Sunday for the race. 4 a.m. UK time, I'll be going live for the 6 a.m. UK time start. Join me for that race watch along so we can enjoy the Japanese Grand Prix all along together. And then, obviously, there'll be a quali and race watch along for the next race in Bahrain, and then the same the week after in Saudi Arabia. So plenty of content coming your way over the next, 2.5 weeks on the channel. So make sure to subscribe for more content like this. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. And as well, smash that like button if you haven't already. Does help the channel grow and helps in the algorithm quite a bit. But yeah, guys, that is it for this qualifying preview. A bit of a short qualifying preview. Also, this is going to be the last qualifying preview that I do, probably until at least May. Definitely won't be doing a qualifying preview for the next 2 races after this weekend. Maybe for Miami, we'll see. But yeah, it will be going away for a bit, but it will be coming back at some point, whether it's May or June. It will be coming back for certain races. But guys, until the qualifying session tomorrow, let's see who gets pole and let's see what the grid is. And until my stream on Sunday covering the Japanese Grand Prix, it has been me, Chazzer HD. Goodbye.